Hi, welcome to Chapter 11, Section 2. We're going to be covering the dead clutch of the Judiciary all the way to the Aaron Burr Conspiracies. So, you have the election of 1800. Jefferson wins. Very contested election. The House of Representatives picks. Shortly after that, you have the 12th Amendment. And in the next year, during Jefferson's first year in office, you have the Judiciary Act of 1801, which was passed by the expiring Federalist Congress that created 16 new courts, federal judgeships. This is actually before Jefferson took over, excuse me, because back then Inauguration Day was March 4th instead of January 20th. So there's 16 new judges that need to be appointed, and John Adams, the outgoing president, has the task of doing that. The Senate would then approve. The new Republican Democratic Congress quickly repealed the act and kicked out these 16 newly appointed, newly seated six midnight judges because they were kind of put in power at the last minute by the outgoing Federalists, mainly John Adams. One Federalist judge, Chief Justice John Marshall, was not removed though, and he was kept. And he continued the Federalist traditions for 34 years. That's the unique thing about the Supreme Court is they basically continue the president's views and their politics long after the president's out of office. Since the Supreme Court rules for life. So there's a picture of John Marshall there. James Madison was the new Secretary of State. And famously, Jefferson had some stacks of papers of judges that were supposed to be appointed. He instructed Madison to not file some paperwork. So James Madison also didn't do that. He also cut the judge Marbury his salary. And so Marbury sued James Madison for his pay. And this got all the way to the Supreme Court. And the court ruled that Marbury had the right to his pay, but the court did not have the authority to force Madison to give Marbury his pay. Like, hey, you can have your money, but we can't tell him what to do. We're the judicial branch. We just interpret law. We don't enforce it. That's the executive branch, which he's a part of. Good luck getting your cash. Sorry. But most importantly, it established judicial review, which is the duty of the primary duty of the Supreme Court and the judicial branch is they compare laws to the Constitution and state whether or not they're constitutional or unconstitutional. And it's kind of a big check for that system of checks and balances that the Supreme Court had. Later on, some other things going on. You have Samuel Chase, who's a Supreme Court justice that the Democratic Republicans actually tried to impeach in 1804. So we had impeachment hearings. Remember, impeachment just means to formally charge. The Senate didn't put some on trial. But I mean, most people think of impeachment of Nixon. Well, he wasn't. He resigned. But Andrew Johnson and Bill Clinton. But we've actually had other officials impeached, including Samuel Chase. He was not removed because it takes a 2/3 majority in the Senate to find them guilty for removal of office. So he kept his job. So some early testings of the system of checks and balances from the Constitution. The Supreme Court finally has their power, judicial review, which they still use mainly to today. So it showed, hey, checks and balances work. The founding fathers, the framers of the Constitution, good job, you did well. So Jefferson, not one to be a fighter, he greatly reduced the size of the American military. Standing armies were against Republican ideals to him, and they led to dictatorships, which they had a fear of Hamilton at one point becoming a little Napoleon. They kind of mentioned that with John Adams and the XYZ affair and all that stuff. But the Pasha of Tripoli formally declared war on America in 1801. He did so by chopping down our flagpole at the embassy in Tripoli. These are the Barbary Coast Pirates. Our first foreign war after the American Revolution isn't against Britain. It's not against France, even though they're seizing our ships and they're being mean to us and egging Native Americans on. We're actually fighting pirates. So they chopped down our flagpole. Jefferson also refused to pay a $225,000 tribute when he was inaugurated. They demanded that, and so the Pasha went and chopped down our flagpole. When we were under the British Empire, the British took care of us. They either paid it or, these Barbary Coast pirates didn't bother with the British because their navy was supreme. And so Jefferson sent the navy to a new navy to Tripoli, and after 4 years of fighting, they actually reached a deal. We paid $60,000 for the release of captured Americans. There was white American slaves in Africa, kind of a twist on the historical thing of slavery. But American sailors were captured and forced into slavery. So white American slaves in Africa. So we freed them. There was a second war that broke out in 1807 against the Algiers, which finished in 1815. America won its first foreign war. 39 men were killed in this war. It's not much of note. The Marine hymn mentions it, about Stephen Decatur to the shores of Tripoli, that a daring rescue. And this is actually a picture of them burning their own boat, which was the USS Philadelphia, was captured by the pirates. And so Stephen Decatur led a really daring raid in the shores of Tripoli, and set ablaze to our own ship. So they hated pirates could not use it. And like I said, it's celebrated in the Marine hymn today. This is the Tripolitan War. Barbary Coast War is what I've always heard it as. But so Jefferson, for a guy who didn't want to do anything, we actually went to war. Here's a map where the Tripoli was going on, and then Algiers in 1807 to 1815. So it's not a major all-out war, although there are men fighting there on the ground, and our Navy was there as well. So Napoleon convinced the King of Spain to give him Louisiana. Later on, the King of Spain is his brother, so maybe it was just over dinner, Thanksgiving or something. The French don't celebrate Thanksgiving, do they? I forgot. And so then they closed New Orleans to American use, and for this westward movement that's going on to Ohio and in the Northwest Territory, they needed New Orleans because that was really the only way to ship their goods to the eastern markets. The roads were so terrible, they needed to ship them downriver to New Orleans. And so Jefferson, this was really distraughted him, sent James Monroe and an envoy to join Robert Livingston in Paris for 1803 to buy as much land as they could for $10 million. He's like, I don't care what you get, but we got to use New Orleans. Go talk to Napoleon. Here's $10 million. Spend what you can. Try to get a good deal. So they wanted to buy just New Orleans, some of the land maybe in western Alabama, maybe parts of Mississippi in there, kind of a little bit, on the southern Gulf Coast. They were also prepared to ally with Britain if France refused, which is going against Jefferson's own love of the French. He was a Francophile, but it was doing what was best for his country. Remember, he's a man of contradictions. Fighting France or joining Britain was against his own philosophies. But then the Haitian Revolution, led by Toussaint Louverture, which was back then called Santo Domingo, they revolted and they basically kicked the French out. This was an African slave revolt in Santo Domingo, and because of it, Napoleon's dreams of an American empire, that was the center for his navy, were dashed. He's also got some plans on conquering Europe, eventually invading Russia. And so Napoleon's strapped for cash. He gives up on his American dream. And so while our people are there, they have $10 million. They're trying to buy New Orleans. Basically, Napoleon goes, how about all of Louisiana? And they're going, well, I don't know. He's like, I don't know. I need to know. I need a decision. You need to tell me right now, do you want to buy all of Louisiana? Like I said, he lost Santo Domingo to Saint Louverture, his revolution. He did not want the British taking over Louisiana because that was his enemy. So he wanted to sell it to America, use the money in France, and strengthen a potential enemy of Britain. And try to maybe divert some of the forces from the British against what he wants to do. So Livingston, along with James Monroe, negotiated in Paris for the sale of Louisiana. Now, it's not like now where you can send a quick text message to Jefferson going, hey, they want to sell all Louisiana for this price. What do you say? They had to go on a hunch. They were told you could spend $10 million, but Napoleon was offering so much more land, and it was too good to pass up. So they offered it for $15 million. They signed the treaty on April 30th, 1803. For $15 million. I had a little glitch there. And it ended up being 820,000 square miles or 3 cents an acre. That's a pretty good deal. Basically, it's everything from the Mississippi all the way to the Rocky Mountains. It's not just the state of Louisiana we think of today. This is a vast, vast territory. It doubles the size of the United States. Uh, but big question, is it constitutional? Jefferson, a strict interpreter of the Constitution, had to go against his own rules once again. He had to contradict himself because there's nothing in there about real estate deals. The founding fathers, the framers, never put that in there. And so Jefferson had to bend his own rules. It's a really good deal, but Jefferson is not in there. Well, I'm the president. I can sign treaties. So there you go. It's a treaty. We signed a treaty. That's all. So he had to wrestle with his views again. He also feared Napoleon would change his mind. So they submitted the treaty, even though he personally thought it was unconstitutional, which is too good of a deal. We were kind of robbing the French blind for this land. And like I said, we doubled the size of the country. So you can see here, the light blue was the stuff that was added from the Mississippi River. Kind of can see there all the way to the Rocky Mountains. You have the United Kingdom. You still have France. Well, no, France. You're not there anymore. Sorry. Spain, and then even Russia, which we'll talk about them later. So before they even had the Louisiana Purchase, Jefferson sent his personal secretary, Meriwether Lewis, and his buddy, a military officer, William Clark, to explore the northern part of the Louisiana Purchase. This was already planned before they bought it, but then while they're making arrangements, they did purchase Louisiana, and it gave this exploration a little bit more urgency. I always laughed. If your name was Meriwether, I think you would go by Lewis and Clark as well. So they left in 1804 from St. Louis, and they went up the Missouri River. Their goal was to find the Northwest Passage, this mythical all-water passage to the Pacific Ocean they still thought maybe exist. They also were supposed to explore, gather specimens, name species, name rivers, name mountains. There was one guy that was they ran out of names. They kept naming river after river. And one guy hoping to impress his girlfriend, or a lady he liked back home, named that for her, the Mariah River, which it still is today. I think it's in Montana. So they're called the Corps of Discovery. They camped in North Dakota in the winter with the Mandan people. The story of the Lewis and Clark and their expedition it's extraordinary. If you get a chance to read anything about it, they go away for 2 years. I mean, when our people went to the moon, they were in constant contact with Houston, with NASA. These guys were gone for 2 years. People forgot, like, hey, we thought you guys were dead. Wow, you guys made it back. Cool. They only, had one major skirmish where they fired their guns. They only had one death in the whole company. And that person died of appendicitis, they believe. He probably would have died in Philadelphia with Benjamin Rush, the most renowned doctor in the country at the time. They were led famously by Sacagawea or Bird Woman, who helped them get through the mountains and reach the Pacific. She was actually, she was married to a Frenchman, and she was taken from her people. And the first tribes they meet in the mountains turned out to be her brother. Was the chief, and he was ready to slaughter the whites and take their guns to be the most powerful tribe west of the Mississippi, because they had a lot of guns and they had a lot of ammo. That's something they never ran out of. They even ran out of booze, but didn't run out of guns or ammunition. But because it was his sister, he helped them through there, and they made it to the Pacific Ocean, where they made Fort Clatsop, which is by modern-day Astoria, Oregon, in 1805. By that point, they were eating elk and drinking water, and that was all they had. On the way back, they split up and explored, and Lewis and Clark. Lewis made this very detailed map, and he took it back to Jefferson. Sadly, after this, he later in life committed suicide. He always dealt with a little bit of melancholy. They returned in September 1806. Meanwhile, there was another expedition. Zebulon Pike was also sent out by Congress to explore a little bit more of it, kind of the southern regions of it. He explored the mouth of the Mississippi and Minnesota, and then all the way to the plains of Colorado, where he famously named Pike's Peak, or was named after him, excuse me. He was the first white that was noted to see it. And that's 1805 to 1807. So you can see the route here of Lewis and Clark. Like I said, if you ever get a chance to read about Lewis and Clark, it's great. Pike's Peak. Zebulon Pike was actually captured by the Spanish. He was taken all the way to Mexico, and then he was let go and he returned. But these explorations led to a burgeoning, trapping business, mountain men going in and trapping beaver furs, and kind of our first explorers came from, these expeditions. So here's the medals they actually gave to the Native Americans. They were from the Great White Chief, showing Jefferson, and they wanted peace, but they're making sure they got a peace pipe and an axe to make sure they knew we are powerful. They had a big gun on their keel boat when they went up to Missouri. Make sure they fired it a lot to kind of intimidate the Native Americans. So another picture, Lewis on the left, Clark on the right, and you can see their journey. Well, people forget that it was a long journey for them just to get to St. Louis, and they had to get provisions and sign up men, and it took a lot of planning. And pretty amazing tale. There's a great documentary of it by Ken Burns. You get a chance to check that out as well. So, Aaron Burr, the vice president, who didn't step aside in the election in 1800, he didn't concede because he had a chance to be president, was dropped from Jefferson's cabinet. Aaron Burr blamed Hamilton for not winning because Hamilton was the one who persuaded one congressman from New York to not vote, to abstain, and that allowed Jefferson to win on the 36th ballot. He joined an extreme group of Federalists who plotted to get New England and possibly New York to secede from the Union. Americans usually equate secession with, the South, because the South tried to do it, but the first secession plans were actually in the North. Hamilton uncovered the plot and campaigned against him. Aaron Burr was running for governor of New York. He's the vice president, running for, he's not officially on it, but he's still the vice president, running for governor of New York, and Hamilton campaigned against him, and Burr loses again. And he blames Hamilton, and so he challenges him to a duel, which was illegal in New York. Not allowed to duel, so they had to go across the Hudson River to New Jersey, where it was legal, on July 11th, 1804. There were some other issues on there. There were some insults being hurled back and forth. And so they chose pistols, they marched off their paces, and they turned, and Hamilton fired first. And most historians think that he fired symbolically. He aimed above Burr's head purposely, just to show that I'm going to stand up to you, but I'm not willing to kill you, because he was a pretty good shot. Burr blasted him, and poor Hamilton passed away. He died, ending the reign of a great, great man. Saved our country from financial ruin. Head of the Federalist Party. Probably could have been president at some point if he wasn't so outspoken and kind of grating at times. Burr fled to the west. He allied with General James Wilkinson. It doesn't even end there. They wanted to separate the western part of the United States from the east and expand their confederacy with invasions into Mexico and Florida. So they want to form their own country and then steal stuff from the Spanish and what would become Mexico. So he's killed Alexander Hamilton. He's plotted against his own party. He's trying to secede, and that didn't work. So he's going to go form a new country with this general. They're going to take land from the Spanish / Mexico. Wilkinson betrayed Burr when it was learned that Jefferson knew of the plot, what was going on, and so Burr is actually put on trial for treason. But he was acquitted by Chief Justice John Marshall. I'm not sure how that happened. I don't know the details on his acquittal. But he fled to Europe and kind of, died in obscurity. He actually urged Napoleon to make peace with Britain and then jointly invade the United States at that point. He hated us. He hated our country. He was spurned by his party. He was, twice wronged by Alexander Hamilton. He got his revenge there, but he never got his revenge in the United States. So that's Aaron Burr, probably the craziest vice president we ever had. You thought it was bad that Dick Cheney shot his friend in the face. Duck hunting. But Aaron Burr killed Hamilton, tried to form his own country to take stuff from us and take from Spain, tried to get Napoleon and the British to join forces and attack us. If you have any questions, let me know. Put it in the comments or comments like that. We'll talk till the next time. We'll talk about the War of 1812. Here's the picture of Burr shooting Hamilton. Oh, poor guy.